Hey guys, what's going on? I'm sure many of you over the past few days have seen the RoboCop helmet story about how they're using helmets in Michigan to detect the body temperatures of people for the CV. And I wanted to go over it because there is a larger view here that is not being talked about, and that is this helmet's fusion with the new data center approach that they have towards fighting crime that I went over in a previous episode. So we're going to get started with just the RoboCop helmet, but then we'll go down a little bit further down the hole. All right, guys. RoboCop is here. New police helmet scans for the CV and uses facial recognition. It took 33 years, notice the symbolism there, but RoboCop is now here. Well, not exactly, but the rise of the police state fueled by advancements in the technology have given birth to a heads-up display equipped helmet sure to please the most anxious of police officers. It's called a smart helmet, and it can screen airport passengers for the CV, as well as provide the scanning officer with other vital records. Public officials in Flint, Michigan cannot provide clean drinking water to their residents, but travelers to Bishop International Airport can get a glimpse of the new robotic helmets where they are currently deployed. Under the guise of screening passengers for CV, the smart helmet, produced by KeyBiz, based in Italy, can scan travelers' body temperatures from over 20 feet away. But the smart helmet is not limited to temperature body scans, which any laser-guided thermometer can do, not in the slightest. Facial recognition software is installed, which can provide the police officer with information related to outstanding warrants. If an individual is identified on a terror watch list or a no-fly list, and can read license plates for outstanding warrants, stolen vehicle information, criminal histories, etc. Even if you are completely innocent, you will be subject to these scans. Temperature scans can be done at a distance of 21 feet or less. The helmets have already been deployed in Italy and elsewhere around the world. Michigan's ABC 12 reports if someone's temperature is in excess of 100.4 degrees, more investigation into the traveler's health will be conducted to determine if the passenger is too sick to travel. We at TFTP have warned our readers for some time the CV pandemic would be used as an onus for a greater invasion of privacy. Some of us here are old enough to remember when boarding a plane was as simple as buying a ticket and getting on board. Fast forward nearly 20 years later, and there are quite a few things which happen the minute your ticket is purchased. First, your name, age, and birthday are checked to see if you've been added to a terror watch list, a no-fly list, or otherwise. Then, when you are cleared to travel, you must soon possess a, quote, real ID. Without it, come October, you won't be able to fly, and that's been extended, I think, to next year. Upon arrival to the airport, your identification is scanned and further checked in databases for any flags which may arise. Afterward, all of your pockets must be emptied, your shoes taken off your belts, hats and metal jewelry removed. You are placed into a sniffing device to check to see if you're carrying the scent of bomb-making materials. Next, your entire body image is scanned. Later, a total stranger may pat you down and grope your private parts as you wait for the all-clear sign to be given, at which time you can retrieve your belongings. But that's only if the x-ray technician doesn't think your hand sanitizer has too many ounces in its container. Now it seems Mr. RoboCop will take your temperature against your will, search through your criminal history, and examine your facial features. All of these things will likely be cataloged in another alphabet agency's database. The entire invasion of privacy will fall under the auspices of fears surrounding a fairly mild pandemic, using slogans like, "It's for your health and safety." And you thought it was about keeping America safe from terrorism. Think again. This makes me long for the good old days when the only danger in flying was smelling like cigarette smoke from all the other puffers aboard. The author of this article nailed it right at the beginning when he said that you could take people's temperatures with a laser thermometer from a pretty darn good distance, as a matter of fact, from a really far distance, and you could check body temperatures. So if you can do that with a lesser expensive device, and you could do it much simpler, then you have to assume that the real reason you're using the helmet is for the other features. And what are the other features? Turns out that there's quite a few. It connects to these data hubs and uses facial recognition. So ultimately, the question is more like, what can't it do given time? Let's listen to this news report.
The biggest feature is that this is a mobile platform.
New at 5, Bishop International Airport in Flint is turning to smart technology in its efforts to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Today, the airport announced the deployment of the mobile smart helmet technology that can detect elevated temperatures in a crowd. Our Don Jones has more on the new technology that airport officials say can only be found at one place in the U.S., Bishop Airport.
In an effort to identify and prevent the spread of COVID-19, Bishop International Airport in Flint for several months has been checking the temperatures of every person who enters the building, with the exception of one group.
But the one thing we're missing is incoming passengers.
So, right out the rip, just so you know, they're scanning people, but only people leaving. They're not scanning anybody coming in. They're just missing that one small group.
Airport director says the new mobile smart helmet technology announced Friday will be a game changer.
This is really the next step in our plans to fight the spread of COVID-19.
Oh my God, did you hear that? Just listen to this is the biggest load of BS I've ever heard in my life. Listen to this man try to say that this is the next step in their fight against the CV.
In our plans to fight the spread of COVID-19.
That's what it's for, right?
Feature is that this is a mobile platform.
The smart helmet announcement is in partnership between Bishop Airport and
Notice he said the best feature is that it is a mobile platform.
manufacturer KeyBiz, located in Rome, Italy. The technology has been deployed in other parts of the world, like the Rome airport that you see in this video. According to Bishop Airport officials, their police will be the first in the U.S. to use the technology.
Anywhere that an officer goes, the technology goes with that officer. They simply put it on, and whether they're responding to a police call, patrolling the terminal, or alarms or anything of that effect, they will have the helmet on and they can monitor temperatures both to and from those calls.
Now notice we heard the same kind of speech patterns whenever they were talking about the data hub centers and I consider pre-crime centers. Like I was talking about the one in Chicago. They're talking about when the officer gets there, they will have access to this greater hub of information. You know, they'll know everything about everything that they walk by. And so the ultimate goal is for them to have the quickest access to the largest amount of data. And we're hearing the same kind of vernacular being spoken about the helmet, and that's because the helmet is the on the ground manifestation of this big data system that they're trying to create, this pre-crime system.
The device is said to be accurate within 0.3 degrees Celsius or 0.17 degrees Fahrenheit. The helmet also has other integrated technologies,
such as facial recognition, license plate recognition, QR code recognition, and things of that nature.
Dawn Jones.
Facial recognition, QR code recognition, license plate recognition. And let me tell you guys something. There is something about the QR code. Look at this guy's face over here while he's saying the various features of this helmet. Look at that guy. He is like, yeah, man, this helmet right here, yeah.
Such as facial recognition, license plate recognition, QR code recognition, and things of that nature.
Awesome.
Dawn Jones.
Now, I was wondering if it had been used anywhere else besides Italy. And, you know, there's usually the telltale sign that something's on its way here. You'll see it pop up in China. And so I was wondering, was it used in the, quote, reopening of Wuhan? And it was.
Traffic has returned to Wuhan streets, but this is a new normal, one that keeps watch everywhere. Local police boasting of new technology deployed, helmets with a video thermometer they claim allows officers to scan the temperatures of more than 100 airport passengers in just 2 minutes.
Okay, wait a minute. Did anybody else register what they just saw? It's funny because initially they said that it was about RoboCop, but I didn't quite see it. But now that I've seen the Wuhan version of it, I definitely understand the RoboCop reference. Here, let me play this last few seconds back for you, and I'll dress it up a little bit.
It's not clear if this experimental tech is a practical tool. Our team
I think it's becoming clear it's a practical tool, and at this point, in this point of the reporting here, they didn't even know that it did all those other features, I guess.
from Beijing to Wuhan, seeing life firsthand after the 76-day lockdown was lifted. Nervous residents still wearing protective gear. Travelers even being scolded for not wearing masks properly. And now new signs.
And see, this is the thing here. Something like this is about to be in your everywhere soon.
Requiring passengers scan a health code which will allow some to travel on the subway. Even on the Yangtze River, security checkpoints scan the crowd's temperature.
I'm telling you, there's something about these QR codes. I'm going to show you a TV show. You know, just look at this TV show right here.
In the blink of an eye, connect to everyone. Never miss those moments again. Relive them. Be there. Be informed. Be better. Dream together. Discover together. The world's knowledge is yours at a glance. Invent a more beautiful world. Share your world. Share your life. Your memories, Mundels, are safe forever.
So this is a show called The Feed. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks like to be right in line with what we're talking about. Sharing your everything to the data gods. And this all ties into the health tracking and restriction apps, the exposure notification feature that Apple just put on your phone without asking you. It all ties into 5G. It's all one big giant thing. Just look at this video that I posted earlier in the year about what was coming down the pike with these apps.
What about the new surveillance techniques introduced to curb the spread?
In Hangzhou, to go out of the community or to public activities, you need to have a green code. This green, yellow or red code is automatically decided through the system. It uses big data to decide whether you've been to affected districts or come into contact with those people.
I think that although it's not really reasonable, it is still a preventative measure.
And that's exactly what the goal of this whole thing was. Unreasonable control measures. And this guy, he's so ideologically subverted by a communist country that he says, although I don't think it's effective, it's a good control. How can you think both of those things? He's trying to put together in his mind what his country is telling him. Oh, and this is as good a time as any to say, y'all remember when all these videos were coming from Wuhan, people were dropping dead in the streets and people were holding watches out their window for food, supposedly? That shit was all fake.
We actually looked at the back-end code that the app was running, and what you could see is the moment that a user gives it permission to access data, it immediately sends a function that says report info and location to police. And then we looked into it, and the police were a key developer of the product as well. And so from that you can tell that the data is basically being sent back to the police the moment somebody actually uses the app.
And do you guys think this exposure notifications feature got on your iPhone any other way? They may dress it up and the code might not say send to police as it did with the obvious Wuhan app, but our intelligence agencies were obviously in cooperation in making these exposure notification apps. Come on. How else did they get on your phone without you wanting to download it? They told you were going to have to download an app or you wouldn't have to worry about it, and yet there it is as a feature. What kind of pull do you have to get that done?
In some 200 Chinese cities, you now need a green code to get on public transport. Without it, you can do almost nothing.
I'm not an expert, but if the government says this is useful, I believe them.
I'm no expert, but if the government says that it's okay, then surely it must be okay. It's funny because back when I made this original health tracking and restrictions episode, it didn't even strike me the level of police state propaganda that these interviewees were having. But now it is really striking to me because I know people in my life that would say those exact same things, and I would have never thought them to be the type of people to say those things before the Civ.
A Chinese company has now developed facial recognition technology that works even if you're wearing a mask. The epidemic has enabled the Chinese authorities to normalize digital social control, something they're unlikely to relinquish.
That's right, facial recognition, good enough to still get you with your mask on. We all know this now. This is becoming a fact of life. And why am I talking over Chinese B-roll right now? I don't know. But the thing that's really bad about this, the helmet, the apps, the movement restriction, is we also have Palantir and Clearview AI, these intelligence companies that are literally weaponized against the American people, and all of that comes together in this CPIC office that they have in various regions throughout the country. I'll go over the one from Chicago, but let's go through this Clearview AI.
Well, look, Clearview AI is a facial recognition app designed specifically for law enforcement, which can identify anyone with just a single photo. The founder says the app is 99.6% accurate. So we put it to the test. We ran my photo in the search engine, and instantly 103 results showed up. All photos of me with links from all over the internet, including me in the background of someone else's photo. We then covered half of my face, and it still recognized me. We even took a photo of my producer from a distance, and it also found him. Founder Juan Tontat claims some 600...
So understand that means that they can get a picture of anyone. As soon as they get a picture of anyone, they know that person's identity. And the crazy thing about it is with the helmet, all they have to do is see you through the visor.
Law enforcement agencies nationwide are already using the app. The Chicago Police Department confirms it signed a 2-year trial. Now,
of course, the Chicago Police Department, and I'm getting ready to go through their CPIC center here in just a second.
TAT claims the technology is helping in thousands of cases identifying shoplifters, murderers, and pedophiles.
We believe that what we're doing is in the public interest. There have been cases where we've helped to identify children who have been the victim of.
I'm always so wary when people want to put up justifying a new system of control and they use the most tragic and evil and heinous things as a buttress for their argument. It always leaves a foul taste in my mouth.
Child sex trafficking.
Clearview AI claims it has a database of more than 3 billion internet photos taken from various websites like Google and the world's largest social media companies like Facebook, which have all sent cease and desist letters to shut down the app, claiming that scraping people's information violates their terms of service. Privacy advocates agree.
There could be concerns about stalkers or of people who are victims of domestic violence, or people who just want a certain amount of privacy and didn't even load that information themselves.
Tontat says they only use publicly available photos that you and I would post. He promises this app won't ever be made available to the public. As for that lawsuit...
He promises that this app won't ever be made available to the public. Does anybody trust the government with this app? It's like, I would rather you make the app available to the public because the government has it, so why can't we?
Review AI told us this morning they are committed to abiding by the law. Melissa?
But it's not like if they take down this one company, this technology is going to go away. I mean, this technology is everywhere. So many people are developing it, whether it's Google or Amazon or other small companies. Right? I mean,
it's true. I mean, we've seen this before where you have data companies that are they're scraping data from all these social media companies. Facial recognition is out there. Google had it in 2011 and they stopped because they felt like ethically they shouldn't move forward. Juan Tantat says, you know what? I believe this is an important tool for law enforcement. The question is whether or not you believe him that he will only keep it for law enforcement and whether or not.
No. And law enforcement is going to use it for non-law enforcement reasons.
Investors will pressure him to make this public. I think there's a other question out there whether or not we want everybody to be able to identify anyone walking the street with a simple snap of the.
I think it has to be one way or the other. Either nobody has it or everyone does.
And if that kind of power belongs to one person and one company.
Right, but even if he doesn't sell it to the public, someone else will develop it and sell it to the public. So it's sort of like the cat's out of the bag. It's also an interesting cross-current with the other story we're doing about CBP wanting to get into New York's database from the DMV. You know, someone told me that that's really about wanting to get photos of people that they're looking for. Well, here's another way to get photos of everybody. If you can't get in to see your driver's license photo, they can look on the internet and find it, right, Brian?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, the Clearview AI says they welcome regulation. They want this.
So she just dropped a little truth bomb about how the government was trying to get access to the DMV records of a state so that they could compare the driver's license photographs to people that they had images of that were wanted.
Conversation. They agree with you that at some point it's going to have to happen sooner rather than later.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Cat's out of the bag. Brian Yanis, great stuff.
And so this helmet, it's more than just a helmet, isn't it? It scans QR codes, license plates, faces. It does facial recognition. Facial recognition that can connect to the CPIC centers throughout the country and provide instantaneous information about wants and warrants, about criminal history and background. It is the fusion of the data center and the information warfare model with policing. It's creepily very much like RoboCop. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this is all moving really fast. All right, let's go over this CPIC thing. This is from an old video, so if you guys have seen it, don't go through it again if you don't want to, but it's important because these little CPIC centers are everywhere throughout the country, and it was in a news conference about an unrelated matter that I started looking into these CPIC centers. And if you look at Millie Weaver's documentary, you look at the information I've provided here, and you look at this, quote, RoboCop laughable article, it's actually very real. Those helmets, they're not testing out how well they take people's temperatures. They can take people's temperatures from yards away with a laser. They're testing out the other functions. So yeah, alright, so we'll do CPIC. GovTech.com. The Chicago Fusion Center gives police new criminal investigation tools. Chicago's new Crime Prevention Information Center, or CPIC, equips the city to prevent terrorist attacks and revolutionize investigations. In a windowless room with walls dotted by TV screens and large computer monitors, a detective replays the sound of gunshots. It has been automatically detected and recorded miles away by a new gunfire detection system, one of many features available on Chicago's new Crime Prevention Information Center. The gunshot detection system recognizes and tapes the sound of gunfire in the city's hot crime zones and immediately alerts the center's staff, providing a street address through triangulation so police officers can investigate. So CPIC is an extension of the Deployment Operations Center, or the DOC. CPIC is one of more than 40 fusion centers that state and local law enforcement launched in response to 9/11. As noted in a recent Congressional Research Service report, although elements of the information and intelligence fusion function was conducted prior to 9/11, by better integration of the various streams of information and intelligence, including that data flowing from the federal government, state, local, and tribal governments, as well as the private sector, a more accurate picture of risks to people, economic infrastructure, and communities can be developed and translated into protective action. That's a mouthful. Basically, what that says is, if they can consolidate all the data information from all the government entities, large to small, and all the industrial entities, large to small, then they can form a better picture of what's going on in the world. Oh, and I feel like this is a great time to tell you that this was all before they had the apps like Citizen and Neighborly and all the other things that they've used to gather this data. The ultimate goal of a fusion center is to prevent terrorist attacks pre-crime, right? And to respond to natural disasters instantaneously should they occur. But as the CRS report noted, there is no one model for how a center should be organized. Although many of the centers initially had the singular goal of combating terrorism, most have moved toward broader all crimes and all hazards approaches. Data fusion involves the exchange of information from different sources, including law enforcement, public safety, and the private sector, and, with analysis, can result in meaningful and actionable intelligence and information, according to the U.S. Department of Justice Guidelines paper. The fusion process turns this information and intelligence into actionable knowledge. Fusion also allows for relentless re-evaluation of existing data in context with new data in order to provide constant updates. The public safety and private sector components are integral in the fusion process because they provide fusion centers with crime-related information, including risk and threat assessments and subject matter experts who can aid in threat identification. According to Zobisky, focusing on crime and terrorism, as CPIC does, strengthens the anti-terrorism mission. Everyday crimes often are precursors to a terrorist attack. More importantly, having a center that responds 24/7 to real-life public safety incidents makes the center more prepared if a terrorist threat arises. So now that 9/11, the threat of 9/11 has kind of faded into the background, these institutions that were established to combat terrorism have now kind of stepped back 2 steps and are now working on regular crime, on everyday American citizens, using data collection techniques that we authorize to fight terrorism. This combined focus is evident when you walk into the CPIC room. In addition to wall-mounted computer screens, there are televisions tuned to 24/7 news channels from both the United States and other countries, such as Israel, China, and the Arab states. Approximately 30 full-time staff members, detectives, police officers, and supervisors work at CPIC. As events warrant, each of the 35 suburban departments that work with the center lends officers to help field calls for information. In addition, representatives from the Cook County, Illinois Sheriff's Chief and other federal agencies also provide liaison personnel to the center as needed. While it continues to evolve, CPIC, built for $1 million, funded through a combination of sources, including the U.S. Department of Homeland Security grant, Chicago Police's operational budget, as well as seized drug money, has become a model for other jurisdictions, prompting the DHS to have Zobisky give presentations on CPIC to other law enforcement entities around the country. Much of the information flowing through CPIC, such as access to local and national crime databases, is something a tech-savvy police officer can access without the Fusion Center. But previously, it would have taken multiple searches and a deliberate effort to search for each source. CPIC has automated the process for what databases are searched, and it adds some artificial intelligence to determine information that might be relevant. This is changing the way the Chicago police investigate crimes, Zobisky said. Prior to CPIC, officers would arrive at an incident scene with virtually no other information than what was given in the call. They would then return to the police station, often the next day, to gather other information on file that might be relevant. Now through CPIC, as soon as police officers are dispatched to a home or street intersection, they immediately have relevant information at their fingertips about the location, who called the police from there in the last few days, recent arrests in the area, other reported incidences, and even traffic tickets given recently to On the Block. Officers are more knowledgeable than were before, which makes a big difference with how they approach an investigation and what questions they ask. They aren't faced with the situation of the next day saying to themselves, if only I had known this. CPIC adapts existing applications and technologies to the specific needs of policing and homeland security. A good example of this is the extensive use of GIS maps with multiple layers of information. Once crime and security information is amalgamated, far greater insight is possible for CPEC personnel. The system can predict exactly where the next gang shooting is most likely to occur, for example. CPEC's focus right now, other than terrorism, is violent crime. Zobisky said that since CPIC was launched in April of 2007, Chicago's homicide rate dropped to its lowest level in 42 years. He views CPIC as one contributing factor in no small part because it's changing how police officers respond to and investigate crimes. I'm sure it is. Nothing brings home the fact that CPIC is changing how Chicago's police operate as much as the center's real-time video monitoring capability. Most cameras installed in the city's crime hotspots can be panned and zoomed from any PC in the room, meaning CPIC staff can zero in on suspicious activity in the vicinity. In one instance, a detective watched a CPIC video feed as a group of suspected gang members loitered at a street corner. The video view is about the same as a beat cop would have from across the street, clear enough to detect suspicious activity. That kind of power has helped sell CPIC's innovations to the entire Chicago police force. All it takes is officers responding to an incident, getting directions via their radios for where to look for evidence. They will be looking around in the sky wondering who's watching from where. He's making a reference to this data center that goes for crime before it happens, and he's calling it God. They will be looking around in the sky wondering who's watching us from where. So far, about 600 video cameras have been deployed. The majority of them can pan and zoom. As of present time, 200 more have been ordered, and Zobisky thinks the number will increase. I don't see a time when the number is likely to be reduced, he said. Interestingly, citizens in Chicago haven't expressed any major concern about the cameras going up in public spaces. If anything, on the whole, they seem to be pleased that this new tool helps keep city streets safer, a reaction in many places where public safety cameras have been deployed. Questions about privacy aren't unwarranted, however, given the potential power of fusion centers, especially if centers incorporate financial data and other information that private companies collect about individuals. Though police monitor public spaces by their very presence, video does so differently. By combining different databases, the potential to amass a lot of specific detailed information on individuals increases dramatically. As the CRS report noted, arguments against fusion centers often center around the idea that such centers are essentially preemptive law enforcement, that intelligence gathered in the absence of a criminal predicate is unlawfully gathered intelligence. The argument is that the further law enforcement, public safety, and private sector representatives get away from a criminal predicate, the greater the chances that civil liberties may be violated. The American Civil Liberties Union has expressed concern that a network of fusion centers could become the de facto domestic intelligence agency, established without a public debate about the risks to privacy and civil liberties. The DHS has recognized the privacy concerns. The National Fusion Center Coordination Group has taken a proactive approach to the formulation of standards for the centers in areas of training, civil liberties and civil rights, privacy, and baseline qualifications for analysts. And I'm finished reading all that privacy bullcrap. The truth is, they are combining the infrastructure with 5G to this new Bluetooth technology that exposure notification apps use, the Internet of Things, these massive data collection companies that were exposed in Shadowgate, these CPIC areas that there's at least 40 fusion centers that we know of, and there's many more that we don't. These RoboCop helmets, they deliver all the information to these officers that the RoboCop helmet did. The craziest part of the story is it's a good comparison. Anyways, guys, like, share, sub the channel, and like I had mentioned earlier, I can't share my stuff on Facebook anymore, so you guys have to share my stuff. I doubt very seriously I'm being put in suggested videos. Also, in that vein, I could go and apply for monetization at some point now, but I'm worried about doing that. I think I'm going to just stay donator funded, but if you guys have any suggestions for a new creator, leave them down below in the comment section. Thanks. Alright guys, I'm out of here.